Live.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and I'll call the meeting to order. And attendance, I see all councillors are present, and I've got some opening remarks. The public meeting is being heard by the City Council Planning Advisory Committee, and public notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The non-elected members of the Planning Advisory Committee are Mr. John Beltutis, Mr. David Joyce, Ms. Catherine Brown, and Mr. Paul Jennings. Citizen appointees may ask questions and participate in the discussion in order to assist in making recommendations to City Council, but may not make motions or vote in connection with the public meeting. If a person or public body does not make any oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Planning Committee or City Council before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of City Council or the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Comments received at this meeting, as well as written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the applications that were part of the public meeting tonight. For further information on how to provide comments to the city regarding an application from this public meeting, please email planning@belleville.ca. A recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments in the future. Any persons wishing to be advised of the Belleville Planning Advisory Committee's recommendations with respect to today's applications are requested to provide their name and address, as well as the application in which they have an interest, in writing to the City of Belleville. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll go to the first public meeting. Notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Bylaw 3014, along Cloverleaf Drive for part of Lot 2, Concession 3, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville. Files number is B-77-1136. Owner is GCL Developments Limited. Agent is IBI Group. And Ms. McAdam, can you present the application, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject land is currently zoned low density residential type 1 zone and development zone and designated residential in the official plan. The application proposes to rezone the subject property to a residential type 4 zone with special provisions to accommodate a townhouse condominium development accessed by a private road consisting of a total of 31 townhouse units and a trail connection to Boyd Park. Special provisions requested include increased lot coverage, reductions to the required front yard, as well as the required rear yard. The applicant has also proposed to voluntarily increase the required interior side yard for the yard abutting the property at 107 Cloverleaf Drive. The density of the proposed development is 30.39 units per net hectare. This would be considered medium density in the official plan. A number of public submissions have been received regarding the proposal. They will all be included and addressed in a future recommendation report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Mark Tao as with a formal presentation. And my apologies if I mispronounced that.
Mr. Tao has joined the meeting.
Yes. Hello.
Hi there. So you have the floor.
All right, thank you. So I believe there is a PowerPoint presentation available. There we go. Thank you. Looks like this may be an older version of the presentation. I think, yes. There was an early updated version that was sent through earlier this afternoon.
Okay, committee members do have a copy of that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll work with this one. There's there's some additional images, but we can work with it, through those. So my name is Mark Tao. I'm a registered professional planner with IBI Group in their Kingston office. I'm here this evening to present a project proposed by Gcl Developments Limited, which is a Belleville-based home builder and development company. And this is a townhouse development on Cloverleaf Drive, as noted, with proposed development of 31 bungalow and 1.5-story townhouses. It's a low-rise townhome condominium development that's targeted towards primarily active seniors, smaller families with, given the bungalow and the smaller floor plan layouts. Gcl Developments is and its sister company, Geertsma Homes, have been involved with developing and building residential neighborhoods in Belleville for many years. So examples of similar developments in Belleville include Hanover Place, which is on Hanover Court in Belleville, as well as Eastgate, which is off of Hague Road in Belleville, and Lionsgate, which is off of Hartwood Drive, also in Belleville. And Geertsma also recently completed Westview Village in Peterborough, which also is a similar form. So Gcl believes the development will have a positive impact on the community with the addition of more housing options, being townhouses, and allow the redevelopment of a vacant property. So the subject property is on the north side of Cloverleaf Drive, beside Boyd Park. And next slide, please. So to the north is Boyd Park, as well as a modern subdivision, or several modern subdivisions, multiple phases. And to the east, similarly, low density estate residential lots along Cloverleaf Drive itself. And then to the east, also some regional commercial uses such as Lowe's and Walmart. To the south, older low density residential uses, part of the original development of Cloverleaf Drive, we understand. And to the west, abutting the property is also Boyd Park and low density residential, both subdivisions and original properties along Cloverleaf Drive. Next slide, please. So the subject property itself is approximately 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acres. It has 34 meters of frontage on Cloverleaf and is currently undeveloped. And next slide, please. So the proposal is much like a subdivision. I think there's maybe been a bit of a misunderstanding in terms of when people hear the word condominium, they think of an apartment building that's condominiumized. In fact, this is really just a ground-oriented subdivision, very similar to the developments and the subdivisions that have happened over the past decade or more to the north. So they're proposed to be townhouses, primarily single-story bungalow or 1.5-story bungalows. The image below is from Hanover Court in Belleville, so just to the northeast of here. And so they have, you know, just like any other townhouse development. The big difference here is that instead of them being on a public street, they would be on essentially a private road, a condominium road that would be upkept, maintained, plowed, et cetera, by the residents through a condominium corporation. So it'd be a total of 31 bungalow townhouses. The common elements of the condominium would really be the private road, visitor parking, and some green space associated with the subdivision. There'd be two parking spaces per unit. Some cases would be tandem if they're only single car garages, and other cases would be double car garage available. And then rear yards, just like any other subdivision, private outdoor amenity space, decks, etc. And next slide, please. This is just the site plan. So north is to the left, on the left-hand side of the screen, and Cloverleaf Drive, which is the south, is on the right hand. So the main driveway into the site comes in off of Cloverleaf Drive, and then it ends with a hammerhead turnaround with the 2 blocks of 4 townhouses at the north end. And Boyd Park is on the north, which is the left side, and then on the west, which is the south side, or the bottom of the picture. So 4 and 5 blocks of the townhouses each. So it's intended to be built out, likely phased, you know, building from Cloverleaf Drive north, likely over perhaps 2 phases, depending on the uptake. It's similar to other similar developments the developer has done in Belleville. There is a dwelling immediately to the east, which is 107 Cloverleaf Drive. So it was, from what we understand, severed off many years ago, or vice versa. This property was severed off. And then to the immediate west along Cloverleaf is another older building. Not clear if it's a dwelling or not. It appears it could have been a garage at one point. And then obviously the park to the west and to the north. And next slide, please. So this is a landscape plan was prepared and was included with the application. So it shows what the conceptual landscaping will look like. So again, very much like a traditional subdivision in layout with the townhouse block, driveways, front yards, rear yards, some enhanced landscaping at the entrance along Cloverleaf Drive, and then a mix of single and double garages and decks for each of the units. And next slide, please. This is just a sample elevation of what it would look like. So they are predominantly single-story units. There is the option to have a partial second story with windows in the roof, but really intended to be kind of bungalow or bungalow units, as the developer has coined or has referred to them as. The materials would be a mix of stone, stucco, asphalt shingles, similar to the other 3 developments that the developer has built in Belleville. And next slide, please. So this is the example from Hanover Court. So just the view looking along the street. And next slide, please. So the purpose of the application, as noted by staff, was to request a zoning bylaw amendment to place the lands in a site-specific R4 zone, which would permit the townhouse uses, as well as set site-specific zoning performance provisions dealing with setbacks, lot coverage, and similar matters. Next slide, please. So we reviewed the application against the policies of the 2020 PPS, and we are of the opinion that it meets the intent of the PPS in that it provides redevelopment of the vacant site, provides a mix of housing options, new townhouses in the area, is within the urban boundary, makes use of existing municipal infrastructure and services, is compatible with adjacent uses, etc. And next slide, please. With respect to the official plan, it's designated residential as identified by staff. The density is 30.7 units per net hectare. The upper limit of low density is 25. The property is about 1 hectare or just over 1 hectare. So about each unit is equivalent to 1 unit per hectare on this particular lot. So about 25 units would fall within the medium or within the low density range. The developer is proposing 31, and the medium density designation, it's on the lower end of the medium density designation. And based on our review of the OP and its policies regarding medium density, given the scale in terms of it being townhouses and ground-oriented development as a subdivision, we believe it does meet the policies of the official plan, in that is very similar to a traditional low-density ground-oriented subdivision, such as those found in the area or proposed. And next slide, please. So in terms of compatibility, the proposed development will have connection to Cloverleaf Drive, obviously, in terms of pedestrian infrastructure, as well as connectivity to Boyd Park, similar to the subdivisions to the north. It does allow for development of a large vacant parcel within the urban boundary. Our understanding of the history, originally when this area was developed, was there were earlier contemplations of creating connections through this area as well as part of the subdivision development of the area. Unfortunately, the necessary connections weren't made from the east. Previous subdivision proposals weren't able to consolidate the lands appropriately to make the full connection. So this is a bit of a standalone parcel being developed rather than being connected to the rest of the subdivision to the north, east, and west. because of that, but it still does provide for good connectivity in the area. As I said, although it's technically within the medium density designation category at just over 30 units per hectare, the ground-oriented subdivision, or the ground-oriented townhouses, do fit in with what we would traditionally think of as a low-density residential subdivision, such as those found in the area. The heights are well under the maximum allowed in an R1 zone, for example, being at only 1.5 stories. And we're providing appropriate setbacks, landscaping, fencing, etc., to be compatible with the neighborhood and the adjacent uses. The next slide, please. So there are a number of policies in the OP that speak to the provision of housing, compatibility of housing, provided that there's adequate services available, parking, parkland, walkability, access to a variety of uses, connectivity, transit, etc. And we believe it does meet all the policy tests of the official plan with respect to these matters. So in conclusion, our opinion is that the requested zoning amendment does conform to the official plan. And next slide, please. With respect to zoning, as we've heard, the existing zoning is a mix of R1 and D, which is development zone reserve. That D zone, again, we understand goes back to the previous contemplations for development of the broader lands, including the subdivision lands to the north, east, and west, that they would be developed out in a comprehensive kind of multi-phase subdivision manner. And so the D zone is kind of a leftover from those previous contemplations when the area was zoned as kind of a greenfield development area, we understand. So that's the gray D zone in the rear, and then the residential zone along the front, which kind of matches the rest of most of the rest of the zoning along that corridor. I noted that the garage, or the building on the structure to the immediate west of the property along Cloverleaf, appeared to be a garage. You can see in the picture here that the zoning is an industrial zone. So you're not quite sure what the history or current use of that building is. But it does show that history of some sort of non-residential use. So the proposed use is R4, but really that's just the zone that allows for a townhouse type development, not sometimes R4 would be associated with apartments, for example, or apartment building style structure, but R3, R4 can be used for townhouses as well. So that's what's proposed as part of this site-specific zoning. The next slide, please. So the zoning request, as it says, to change the zoning to an R4, and then to permit individually owned townhomes, and to increase the lot coverage from 30 to 41%, which is, again, fairly common for modern subdivisions, particularly for the townhouse components. To decrease the minimum front and rear yards from 7.5 to 6 meters and 5 meters. And just to pause on that point for a moment, the rear yard of the west blocks is proposed to be 5 meters at a minimum, but the north blocks and the east blocks are all going to be larger than that. There's just a bit of a pinch point on the west-hand side because of the way the driveway access is in terms of the location on the lot. And so the site-specific zoning would also define the yards, because this is a private road condo development, and also require a greater setback from Cloverleaf Drive, or 107 Cloverleaf Drive, which is the house to the southeast. And then finally would permit development on a private road, which again is something that's required because of the condo proposal. And next slide, please. So in terms of the lot coverage, it has been increased, or proposed to be increased, to allow the townhouse development, which again is a standard that's consistent with a lot of modern subdivisions for townhouses, where the lots tend to be narrower and they have really just front and rear yards, so the lot coverage naturally increases a bit. That being said, a servicing report has been done that considered stormwater management, for example, and looked at how stormwater will be managed on the site. And so that has been accommodated. And in fact, again, tying this back to that history of development, as this land's being part of a broader development, these lands fall within the catchment area of the subdivision stormwater ponds that were designed for the broader area. So the stormwater management from this property is intended to be accounted for as part of stormwater ponds developed for the broader development of the broader area. With respect to yard setbacks, we are proposing increased separation to the dwelling to the southwest east at 107. As I said, increase the setback along Cloverleaf to try to match the setbacks of the other houses along Cloverleaf as well, or to match, fall within that range. In the rear yards, the back onto Boyd Park, we're asked to decrease them slightly on the east or on the west side, but they are at or greater on the north side. And then also propose fencing to mitigate potential impacts produced from those reduced yards, and just as part of a normal subdivision development to have fences between rear yards as well. And next slide, please. So in conclusion, we believe the requested amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the policies of the official plan, and is compatible, and that the proposed zoning amendment represents good planning and is in the public interest. And that concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Any questions from committee members? Mr. Jennings.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I had a question about the adjacent property to the west. It looks like it's zoned as an auto repair shop. And I'm just wondering if it seems like the small backyards to the new townhouses would seem to conflict significantly with an auto repair existing use there in that garage. I was wondering how that was being considered.
Yeah, thank you all. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as I said, that one was a bit, we weren't quite sure what was going on with that. You know, looking back in the history and even looking at Google Street View, it appears that there was there's maybe an accessory residential use to it. The garage doesn't look like it's been used as such for a long time. There's been campers parked there as well in terms of perhaps somebody living there. So I'll check with the owner again because he knows the history a bit better, but his understanding was that it had been disused for a number of years. But that's something that we can investigate further for sure. But I think that the overall understanding was it wasn't being actively used and hadn't been as an industrial use for some time. So. Yeah,
it looks that way. I was only concerned because just by reading in the Thurlow zoning, that M1-3 specifically says it can be used as an auto repair shop, the existing building only. But I guess I would just be concerned that the next owner of that property decides to reopen the auto repair shop, and that would cause some problems with your new development, I would think.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and we'll try to dig into that use a little bit further. The only thing I'd offer is my experience with those is if there is an existing zoning in place, that certainly gives them some rights. But in terms of Ministry of Environment allowances, any business would have to make sure that they're not emitting noise, fugitive emissions, et cetera, that wouldn't cause negative impacts off site. So if somebody did start operating in there again, there would be some onus on them as well to ensure that they're not operating in a manner that would cause impacts off site in a manner that disrupts those uses. So, but yeah, certainly something we can try to dig into a little bit more.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mark. Mark, there's been a little bit of sensitivity around the change to high density. And I just want to clarify what I think I heard you say. If it were to remain low density, this development would put forward 25 townhomes. And what Desta described earlier as medium density is where we arrive at the 31 townhomes. And so really the order of magnitude, if I understand it correctly, in the zoning change from low to high density equates to 6 additional townhomes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, it's a good point to clarify. So it would fall within the medium density residential category in the official plan, which ranges from, just double checking here, 25 or 26 units up to 60 units. And we're at 31 right now. So if we were to go to 20, if we were to reduce theoretically to 25 units, we would fall within the low density designation or category in the official plan. So it's just kind of a manner of, yeah, it's not, like I said, it's on the low end of medium density. And probably if you look at a typical modern subdivision and you looked at like a townhouse block or a street with townhouses on it, it would kind of fall in that same range of density, because townhouses, like the lots themselves are pretty consistent with typical townhouse lots in a traditional subdivision with a public street. I think it's just the way this is set up with a condo with a smaller road. It makes it seem, I mean, and it is a bit more compact than a traditional 20-meter wide road.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Baltutis.
Okay, through the chair. Mark, I only see in one entrance off of Cloverleaf, in and out of that. Is there a emergency exit at the end for emergency situations?
Yeah, good question. Through you, Mr. Chair. No, there's just the one entrance. And just, we had a pre-consult with staff to talk about various aspects of the subdivision, including access is one of them. And there is an allowance, or the building code allows for example, to have one entrance where the maximum length of the road in a kind of a single development like this is no more than 90 meters. So there is the one entrance, but there has to be an opportunity for fire trucks to turn around, which is what the hammerhead is at the end. But yeah, because of the frontage, there isn't really an opportunity to provide a secondary access. And so that is one kind of limitation, I guess, of a lot like this. Not dissimilar from a cul-de-sac, I guess, in terms of having a single entrance point, as long as the location and the distance down from the main road isn't longer than 90 meters. That is what typically is needed to satisfy fire codes. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Okay, I have two, Mr. Tao. The entrance coming off Cloverleaf, according to the concept plan, and I'm looking at an updated version that was emailed to us, so I don't know if that changed from what was on online there. But the proximity of the entrance almost looks as though it overlaps the existing driveway to the east. Is that correct?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there is. I have to admit I'm a little bit fuzzy on that, but I believe the existing condition where there's two entrances for the building the driveway to the west, I believe their primary entrance was intended to be their eastern driveway, and so the second entrance that they have now closest to the subject property isn't intended to be the primary entrance, but that is something that I can check into further and see. But I believe the intention is that it's kind of primary entrance, and then the primary entrance from 107 is further east. But we would have to make sure that we wouldn't interfere with their entrance or cause any disruption to traffic. Usually there's, as you would know, there's usually a limitation in terms of how close two driveways can be. So that'll be something we expect, I guess, staff would comment on if it's an issue with respect to the standards.
Yeah, okay. And I pose that question out knowing that staff are taking some notes, but the proximity is close, and I'm just looking, if it were to be developed and then for snow clearing and things of that nature, just don't want overlap on the driveway. So the other question, and this is related to density. So you're looking for maximum lot coverage of 40%, and you're looking for some reductions on your setbacks. If those weren't approved, what kind of density could you see the proposal being met at? So if you had a 30% lot coverage, would you be reducing your number of units then?
Yeah, I think if the lot coverage were lower and also the density number were problematic in terms of getting an increase from 25 to 31, the natural thing to do would be to likely reduce the number of units, because that would deal with both issues. I think from the developer's perspective, the lots themselves are functional in terms of providing enough room for residents. I think what they've found is that this is an attractive product for seniors or empty nesters who still want to have their own dwelling, but don't necessarily want a large yard, for example, to take care of. So I think if you free up more space by deleting units, you could give larger yards, reduce the lot coverage, but it's not necessarily, I guess, what the end buyer that they thought they would have, the target market that they've had these other units would necessarily be looking for. So I think they're trying to kind of balance delivering the product they think that the market was looking for in this particular case versus not overdeveloping the site in a manner that causes impacts that are undesirable. So
okay, I just pose that question out there because again, and having familiarity with other more traditional subdivisions and the different densities that are there, you can see where this would fit in. But this is kind of a unique situation given what's in proximity around it, and I'm a firm believer in complement what is there, and not have a drastic approach where suddenly the density and the type changes so drastically that it's almost incongruent to what's there. So just ask those questions. So thank you for that. Just any other questions from committee members? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Tao. And I have Ms. Kate Donaldson speaking against the application.
Ms. Donaldson joining now.
Ms. Donaldson, you're in the meeting. And if you want to activate your microphone, and if you have video, you can activate that as well. And you have the floor. Be on your bottom left will be the where you
Now
go.
I got you. Here we go again. Some of you are familiar with my husband and I. We've also had to deal with the hotel in our backyard. But let's look at this development now, so that you understand where we are located. We are directly south of the proposed development, directly across the street from it. So for 35 years that we've been here, we've looked at our front window and looked at a beautiful green space. Excuse me. You'd think I'd be used to doing this by now, but I'm not. Anyway, so we've looked out at a green space that has now been completely leveled. And the proposed development wants to put in 31 residences. And just to give you perspective, our entire street, Cloverleaf Drive, has 31 houses, approximately. So by putting in condo units, we're immediately doubling everything, double the number of residences, double the people, double the traffic, double the noise on one property. I can't emphasize that enough. You're looking at putting everyone on our street, the same number of people on one lot. So it's not that we are opposed to development. We knew someday that there wouldn't be deer coming out of that green space onto our front yard. There wouldn't be wildlife coming out of there. We've heard from other people that to the north of us concerns about those animals that were in that green space are now inhabiting their properties, and concerns around that. And I'm not opposed to the townhouses. What I've seen is that they look beautiful. What our concern is the sheer volume that's there. And I agree with Paul as far as complementing the area. Just because you can put 31 townhomes on one lot doesn't mean that you should. The bylaws are in place to protect the area residents. Some of the concerns are, what is that going to do to water, the water on our street? When they did a development to the north, I know there were concerns, the people on the north side of Cloverleaf having water problems as far as flooded basements and such. So we're concerned about that much development across the street. What is that going to do to our water table? We are not on city water, we are on wells. So we have the option of city water, but the well on our property is sufficient, and we're concerned about what that would do to our property. As well, I know that the city went to a great deal of expense to extend Millennium Parkway, to take the traffic that we had accrued through the years when they put in Lowe's and Walmart, Taste of Country. So the extension of Millennium Parkway was put in to alleviate the traffic on Cloverleaf Drive. And now you're looking at potentially putting in a development that has 31 residences. So, you average, even though they're retirees, we're talking about 31 vehicles, at least 31 vehicles. Some people have 2 cars. And where the proposed driveway is, at nighttime, the cars that are coming in and out of that private road, their lights would shine directly into our living room at night time. And so that's another concern. We have young grandchildren that are out playing, and that's a lot of traffic coming in and out of one road. So again, to highlight, I'm not concerned that the townhouses are going in. It's just the sheer volume of townhouses that they're putting in there doesn't complement our quiet residential street. I also wanted to point out that some of the neighbors to the north have started a petition with concerns about this development going in. I will make sure that you get a copy of that's submitted. And right now there's 141 signatures on that with concerns about this development. And there are many people that have made some really good points, people to the north and in the area. And I'll make sure that those comments get screenshotted and sent to you as well, so you can see what some of the concerns are. The people that you were talking about, the property with the garage there, well, we've lived here since almost as long as they've been here. So I can tell you that it's not officially right now operating as a business. The gentleman has a house right beside the garage. He does use it daily, but it's for his own personal use. They're not using it right now. It's not operating as a business. People on both sides of the proposed development, unfortunately, are older and don't have internet, don't have access to be able to attend the Zoom meetings. So it's at a disadvantage to a lot of people on the road. A lot of people don't have internet. So I know that they've sent in some concerns and requests, but aren't able to voice their concerns. So I'm hoping I'm speaking for all of us when I say that we're just extremely concerned about the sheer volume of the properties that are going on there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Donaldson. Any questions from committee members? Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Kate Donaldson. I appreciate your presentation, speaking to us today. You referenced a couple of times that the real concern was with the number, the 31 units, effectively doubling the amount of units on the street. Had you given a thought to what you think is an appropriate number?
Realistically, we've always thought that they would just they would put in a house in there, one house. So to go from what we thought would be one, we thought, oh, they're going to put a house in there, maybe 2 houses in there. To go from that to 31 was just literally blew our minds. People walk by every day, they stop us and they say, what are they putting in there? And I said, condos. And they went, oh, how many? 31. 31 is always the reaction. Reasonably, I would say half that would be reasonable. if I had my choice, I would say 1 5-unit one would be lovely. But, you know, and I know the part of the presentation was they talked about the yard and the extra coverage. I have never met a person that didn't want a little more yard space than some of these townhouses are proposing. So I think that would be a selling feature, not the opposite if they had a little bit more space around their properties.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from committee members? No, I don't see any. Thank you again, Ms. Donaldson. And I don't have any other participants for that one. Thank you. So can I get a motion to refer that to the Planning Advisory Committee? Moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So moving on to 3.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw 3014, 241 Thrasher Road, City of Belleville, file numbers B-77-1139. Owner is Doak Uren Prins and Florent Prins, and agent is Catherine Tran of RFA Planning. And Ms. McAdam, could you present the application, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject land is zoned rural and hazard zone and designated rural and environmental protection in the official plan. Consent application B7-21 severed the surplus dwelling on the west side of the subject land from the remaining rural lands and further environmental lands. The application proposes to rezone a portion of the severed lot from a rural zone to a rural residential zone. This would be to better reflect the existing residential use of this new lot, its lot frontage, and its usable lot area. No changes are proposed to the hazard zone, which is located on the north side of the subject land. So the area hashed out in the large location map that you can see is the proposed rezoning area. The remainder of the lot located in the hazard zone and a little pocket of rural is proposed to be unchanged. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have Catherine Tran as the agent who will make a formal presentation to the committee. Ms. Tran, you're in the meeting.
Hi, yes.
Good evening. You have the floor.
Thank you. Can I just get the presentation rolled up here?
Yeah, staff are likely working on that right now.
Sorry, Chair, 1 second. We're just digging in for that.
Yep, no problem.
Tice Crescent or Thrasher?
Thrasher.
So this public meeting is for the rezoning of 241 Thrasher Road. Next. So just a little background of what has been initiated for this site so far. So first I went through a consent process with a pre-consultation with municipal staff on February 4th, 2021. The consent application was filed on March 22nd, 2021 with approval on May 20th, 2021. And as a condition of that approval, a rezoning was requested. It is also to note that the 20-day appeal period will end on June 10th, which is this Thursday, and thus far there has been no appeals. So through the process of the consent application, the application was sent out to external and internal agencies for comments. It has come back from the Quinte Conservation and the Mohawks Bay of Quinte that there were no objections. The Belleville Planning Department did come back to request a zoning as a condition of approval for the deficient lot frontage, which is where we are at today. So for the rezoning, a pre-consultation meeting was held on April 28th, and the rezoning application was filed on April 30th. Next. to summarize what occurred during the consent application, so the total area was at 25.3 hectares on the severed parcel, which is outlined in red. It has a area of 7.8 hectares. On the retained parcel, which is outlined in green, it has a total of 17.5 hectares. The total frontage of the entire property was 165.92 meters. On the severed parcel, it is 61.07 meters, and on the retained parcel, it is 104.95 meters. On the severed parcel, there is a detached dwelling that exists, and on the retained parcel, there is a private right-of-way that leads into seasonal homes. Next. So it is to note that this rezoning is just for the severed parcel. Once again, has a total area of 7.8 hectares with 61.07 meters of frontage. To the south, there are rural residential uses, and to the north is the Moira River. And to the east and west are once again rural residential uses, and a detached dwelling exists on the property. Next. So under the Belleville official plan, the lands are designated rural land use and environmental protection. At this time, there is no official plan amendment that is requested. Next. For the rezoning, the property is currently zoned as rural zone and hazard zone. So we are proposing to rezone the rural zone lands, which are outlined in red there, from rural zone to rural residential zone to address the deficient lot frontage and the usable lot area. So currently under the rural zone, it requires a minimum lot frontage of 70 meters. The severed parcel currently is 8.93 meters short of that. So under the rural residential zone, it requires a lot frontage of 45 meters, which is a little bit more suitable for the parcel. It is to note that the hazard zones will remain as is with no change. Next. And now I will open up the floor to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? No, I don't see any. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And there's no more speakers on this one, so can I get a motion to refer to the Plan Advisory Committee? Councillor Alsop and Councillor Feeney, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 3.3, Notice of Complete Application and Introductory Public Meeting for Proposed Draft Plan of Subdivision and Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Bylaw 10245, 46 Tice Crescent, City of Belleville. File number is 12T-21001 and B-77-1140. Owner is O3 Capital Incorporated. Agent is Spencer Hutchison of RFA Planning Consultant. And Ms. McAdam, can you present, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We should be, okay, yes, sorry. Nope, that was the correct one. Thank you. So the subject land, as you can see, is at the corner of Tice Crescent and Green Hill Lane. In 2020, the land underwent a land exchange, which transferred approximately 720 square meters of the east end of Tice Crescent road allowance to the owners of the subject land, and a portion of the subject land was transferred to the municipality to facilitate the construction of a new cul-de-sac, which you can see just generally outlined in the picture in the top right corner of the screen. The draft plan of subdivision application proposes to draft approve 2 new blocks for a total of 8 townhouse dwelling units. The rezoning application proposes to rezone the subject land from a restricted industrial M1 zone to a residential 5th density R5 zone with special provisions to facilitate the development of the proposed 8 freehold townhouse dwellings. A number of supporting documents and studies were submitted with the applications, and they are all available on the city's website for public review. At this time, we have not received any public correspondence regarding the application, and the subject land is designated residential in the official plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I have Spencer Hutchison making a formal presentation, and also Chris O'Brien and Arnold Vandermeer are available as well. So I'll bring in Mr. Hutchison with the formal presentation.
Good evening, and as I start, maybe Mark can bring up the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Chairman Carr and members of the committee for your time this evening. It's somewhat similar to the first application, a townhouse development, but on a much smaller infill scale. And the presentation will have the same look as the previous presentation because my colleague helped prepare it for me. So here we are at the east end of Tice, as Desta referred to. And what this will give us is a better turnaround because at the present time, Tice Crescent just peters out to nothing. Next slide, please. So the subject land is just over 1/3 of a hectare, and it's in the serviced area and eligible for municipal servicing. It has just over 71 meters of frontage along Tice Crescent. To the south of it, and this air photo is a bit dated, but there's a fully complete built Green Hill subdivision. To the north, there's an open space, a hydro corridor. To the west is single family dwellings along Tice over to University. And to the east is a CN rail spur line that serves the industrial area to the east. This property is currently vacant with a slight slope to the southeast. Next slide, please. So like my predecessor, this is sort of the history as Desta referred to it. The city and the owner swapped lands to allow for the road construction. They met with staff in late 20, and we filed the application in early May this year. And to be specific, we submitted the rezoning, a draft plan of subdivision, a justification report, a site plan, servicing study and design brief, grading plan, and a noise feasibility study. Next slide, please. So the plan of subdivision is pretty simple. It's just 2 blocks. A block at the north with 3 units on it, and a block on the east side with 5 units on it. Uniquely, as we're referred to, the land is already swapped, so we don't have to create the road. The city already owns the road, or the area where the road or the cul-de-sac will be. Through the development process and your approvals, we will have to do the engineering drawings and actually construct the proper culmination of Tice Crescent. All the units will come off this new terminus. We are on 24 units per hectare, which is just above low density. We're proposing looking at 3-bedroom units, so there'll be availability for a lot of people, a lot of families. There'll be a sidewalk, and we'll extend water and sewer to the properties. And there is a 5-meter wide easement along the south end of the property that runs from Tice over to the railway line. And across the north is a hydro easement that overlays part of the property, but not the cables or the wires overhead. Next slide. So a bit of the site servicing. We are at a low spot. The ground slopes west and south. So there will be a low pressure sewer system. It'll be responsible of each of the owners to have a pump and look after it. And they'll have to maintain it through the time that they own the property. There's existing 200-millimeter water main on Tice, and storm sewer will be swales and then off to the east into the edge of the CN allowance. Next slide. So we did a noise study because of the nearby use. As has been common in other applications, there'll have to be central air, brick masonry on the rear portion facing east, noise warning clauses, and an acoustical barrier along the east property line, and warning clauses in the building permit. Building drawings will have to be reviewed by a consultant to ensure that the noise study is implemented. Next. Just a quick note, as you can see, it's in the orangey brown. It's already designated residential. So there's no need to change the official plan or any of the policies in the residential land use. Next slide. It's a legacy that this property is zoned industrial, restricted industrial, as noted in the air photo and around to the west and in the south are all houses. I don't think anybody would like to see any industrial use on this property, so allowing 8 townhouses would be more in character and complement the new subdivision and the existing houses. Because the Belleville zoning bylaw is such an old document, the townhouse R5 regulations aren't up to the task of townhouse blocks. And we did ask if the staff had any inclination of where the new zoning bylaw would go and maybe work to use that zoning, but it's not available yet. So that's why we've had to ask for site specific to reduce the exterior side yard, pull the buildings closer into the street by 1.5 meters and farther from the east property line, and increase lot coverage to 30, from 30 to 40. I think that if you look at your R5 zone in the bylaw for Belleville, are all constant and well repeated requests because of the nature of the R5 zone when it was originally drafted. Next slide. And just some concept plans, 3 bedrooms, around 1,600 square feet, bungalow and 2-story. And that is a bit of the floor plan. Next slide. And this is the other block, same sort of thing. Just in this case, 5 townhouses together versus the 3 in the previous version. And next slide. Any questions about what we've spoke to this point in time? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? No, I don't see anything. Does Mr. O'Brien, do you have any comments, or Mr. Vandermeer, since you're both in the meeting?
No comments for me. Just wanted to add a little bit to what Spencer was saying. I think with our 10 home project, our intent is to really build off the existing development to the south and sort of add to the character by conforming to the design style of the homes to the south. And I think you'll really see that when you sort of dig into some of the documents that have been submitted so far.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from either? Mr. Vandermeer, do you have anything to add? No? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll get a motion to refer to the Plan Advisory Committee. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Feeney, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Sanderson, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to Plan Advisory Committee meeting. I see we're all in attendance. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, I need confirmation of the minutes of the City Council Planning Committee meeting and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on May 3rd, 2021. Councillor Alsop, Ms. Brown, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you. No deputations. I'll just get a motion to receive any correspondence received by the City Clerk's office. Mr. Baltutis, Councillor Feeney, all in favor? This motion's carried. Thank you. All right, referrals from the public meeting. Notice 6.1 notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Bylaw 3014 along Cloverleaf Drive for Part Lot 2, Concession 3, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville. File number is B-77-1136. Owner is a Gcl Developments Limited. Agent is IBI Group. And the principal planner's report number PP-2021-29 refers. The resolution reads that report number PP-2021-29 dated June 7th, 2021 regarding the notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Bylaw 3014 along Cloverleaf Drive for part of Lot 2, Concession 3, former municipality of Thurlow Township, now City of Belleville, will be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Need somebody to move that, please. Councillor Alsop, seconded by Mr. Joyce. Is there any questions or comments on this one? Mr. Baltutis.
Through the chair, and I guess through the planning department, I'd like the suggestion of the numbers of units dropped to a smaller number to make it, instead of like cramming them all in at 30, 31, bringing it down to a more reasonable number, as the Donaldson have suggested, and Councillor Carr, as you have mentioned as well. So I'm not sure how that plays on next through the planning department and the developer, whether or not they'd be interested in dropping the number of units. That's all. That's about my only comment that I would like to see.
Okay. And Ms. McAdam, do you want to comment there?
Certainly. So through you, Mr. Chair, we will be in touch with the applicant following the meeting to discuss comments raised at this public meeting and relevant policies of our official plan. And we will have that discussion on the unit numbers.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Joyce.
Yeah, just to carry on from Mr. Baltutis, I know that I think the number of 25 was the number for the low density, and you raised it, Councillor Carr, that maybe by looking at something closer to that as part of the review, then we would have less concern about some of the special provisions that would be setbacks, etc. So I guess I'm just echoing Mr. Baltutis, if there's any consideration for something closer to that, and it also could deal with that other concern that Mr. Jennings brought up about that industrial to the west there. Possibly they could not have development at that spot and move it further up the private highway. So there may be able to kill two birds with one stone by doing slightly less and meet all the other conditions and not have special provisions. So anyways, I think that's a work in progress, and Desta is going to go back to the committee with that. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, I don't see any. Yeah, I would tend to agree, and particularly if if there was a reduction in a way that, and I know this is kind of not what the builder wants to hear, but by reducing the numbers, the other part is that private road, and Ms. Donaldson makes a good point. So as you can imagine, you got to put yourself living along that street and in that area, and put yourself in the Donaldson's house. 31 cars coming out, headlights straight onto your house when it's never intended. When you look at some of our developments that we have now, the roads are positioned in such a way and the houses are positioned that chances are you're not getting that direct all the way out. So if there was a reduction and there was a way to particularly take out the unit at the south end, again, keeping in mind with the light industrial there, that somehow that other private road could be reconfigured in such a way to offset off of the existing houses. So they just don't have that disturbance. So I'll just leave those comments with staff. So I've got a motion, all in favor to refer to staff. That's carried. Thank you. 6.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw 3014, 241 Thrasher Road, City of Belleville, file numbers B-77-1139. Owner is Doak R.N. Prins and Flooring Prins. Agent is Catherine Tran, RFA Planning Consultant Incorporated. Resolution reads that report number PP-2021-30, dated June 7th, 2021, regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 3014 as amended, 241 Thrasher Road, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, be received as information, and the staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Councillor Alsop and Councillor Feeney, any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. 6.3, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw 10245, and it's for 46 Tice Crescent, City of Belleville. File number is 12T-21001 and B-77-1140. Owner is O3 Capital Incorporated. Agent is Spencer Hutchison of RFA Planning Consultant. The resolution reads that report number PP-2021-31 dated June 7th, 2021, regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed draft plan of subdivision and amendment to zoning bylaw 10245 as amended, 46 Tice Crescent, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be received as information, and the staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the engineering and moved by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Mr. Joyce. Any questions or comments on this one? Mr. Baltutis, and then Ms. Brown.
Through the chair, back to the planning department engineering, they're talking about low pressure sanitary sewer pumping systems in each of those units. Do we have that anywhere else in the city? And if we do, is it working very well? And, or, you know, I've never heard of it before for full sanitary. You know, I've seen it for low basements. Some, you know, if they want to put a second bathroom in, they pump it up into discharge out to the street. But this, is that kind of the same thing?
Ms. McAdam.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Oh, I have a bit of an echo, but I'll try to deal with it. So I'm not aware of any specific developments in Belleville. However, I can inquire about that. But I have dealt with applications previously that use a similar type of system where it's a force main pumping out to a municipal sewer connection. Not being an engineer, I can't really comment or elaborate much further on that, but have seen proposals of a similar nature.
Mr. Ashton?
Yeah, so in this case, it wasn't it's our ideal is a conventional system. The topography of this land makes this system sort of the only viable option. So in this case, would be a case where, if you want to say in extreme circumstances, this would be permitted. It's not a policy changing from a conventional system whatsoever. It's just in a specific unserviceable area, otherwise through a conventional system.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. McAdam. In the RFA presentation, in the material that we received, it was first indicated that these units would be freehold townhouses located in single-family home subdivision. But I believe it's around page 135. It indicates that this will be rental units and therefore contributing to the increased rental availability across the city. With them being designated as freehold townhouses, does it make a difference that it refers to them as rental units?
Thank you for the question. It was my understanding that they were to be freehold townhouse units, and that may affect the zone provisions that are requested if there are no lot lines drawn between the dividing walls and they were left on one block. So we will have to seek clarification from the applicant to confirm that they're intended to be freehold townhouses.
And then my second question is, do we have any idea the timing and the amount of traffic that goes on the spur line up into the industrial park?
Personally, I don't have an answer for you right now. However, I'll dig a little deeper into the noise study to see if relevant information like that is included there. And if it's not, we can seek out that information too, to see how often that spur line is utilized, if at all right now.
My concern, Mr. Chair, related to the spur line is that it heads right up to P&G, which we know has significant number of employees and a significant number of lines up in that area. And it just happens to be as the crow flies So my concern with the spur line is that it may in fact have a lot of traffic, even with noise barriers behind it. But I'd like to better understand that before I raise the alarm bells. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one? No, okay. All in favor, to refer to staff? It's carried, thank you. So moving on to reports, 7.1, recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw 3014, 950 Casey Road, City of Belleville. File number is B-77-1135. Owner is I own Gerald, and agent is Keith Watson of Watson Land Surveyors. And the resolution is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council. That zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended be amended by rezoning the portion of the subject land zone prime agricultural PA zone to rural RU zone to rural residential RR zone with the severed parcel and the prime agricultural PA zone with special provisions to prohibit residential development for the retained parcel. Somebody move that. Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Any questions or comments on this one? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we're actually going to pull. Ms. McAdam, can you just provide us with a brief explanation, and then I'll get a motion to refer this back to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Only minutes before the tonight's meeting, staff received further correspondence from CN from CN's legal counsel on behalf of CN, was presenting strong objections to the application. The letter was fairly detailed, and given the timing of the letter, staff have not had an opportunity to review and discuss its implications. So therefore, we've made the decision to request to pull the report from consideration at tonight's meeting. Now, I will make a note before I pass it back to you. The letter is dated June 2nd. That's an incorrect timing of when staff received this letter. As I mentioned, we did only receive it this evening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I can confirm that we as committee members received it just prior to the 5:30 start time. So thank you. So with that explanation, I need a motion to refer to staff to report back at a future meeting. Councillor Sanderson and Mr. Jennings. Any questions or comments on that one? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to information matters, 8.1 official plan and zoning bylaw amendment monitoring report, and that's the report to June 7th, 2021. Can I get a motion to receive that, please? Ms. Brown and Mr. Jennings, any questions or comments? Mr. Beltudis. You have a question?
Oh, no, I was just putting my name up for no question.
Okay, no problem. No questions on any of that. All in favor? That's great. Thank you. General business and inquiries. Does anybody have anything? I just have one item. Just request staff to look at developing a policy for the committee's consideration, that the application process include a public meeting hosted by the applicant with area residents. If I could just have staff consider that and report back to the committee. And with that, I just have some closing remarks. That the Planning Advisory Committee's applicable decisions will be forwarded to the City Council for consideration, forming part of the agenda for the City Council meeting to be held at a later date. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor?